Hey there, I'm Cary. I'm a carbon markets and climate finance attorney, as well as a data scientist. I'm also the CEO of Greenomix. This is the first in a series of videos that we're going to be creating to talk about various considerations to understand what is a good carbon credit, how do I understand whether carbon credits are good, who makes these choices. And this video is tailored for beginners, so if you are a voluntary carbon market participant or a methodology expert, you're probably not going to learn anything. But maybe this will be helpful for people who are interested in getting into this market or understanding this market for the first time. What we're talking about today is additionality. And what you see on the screen here is a blog post from the Environmental Defense Fund, which is a prominent nonprofit environmental advocacy group, talking about the importance of additionality for carbon credit integrity. And what additionality measures is whether or not the funding that is provided through the sale of a carbon credit is contributing to the creation of new, verifiable, and measurable greenhouse gas reductions or removals. To simplify that just a little bit, what additionality is asking is, are you creating an additional benefit for the mitigation of climate change through carbon credits? And carbon credits are issued based on carbon projects. So really this question is asking, is a carbon project additional or would it have happened anyway? To provide a very simplified visual accompaniment for that concept, what I've created here is a very basic graph showcasing what additionality is. And this graph shows that the baseline emissions for a hypothetical REDD+ project, which conserves forests, would have expected 100 tons worth of emissions every year due to deforestation. But because of this project, it was projected, or it did, reduce emissions gradually each year so that the green line represents the actual emissions that occurred. The space between these two lines, between the baseline and the actual emissions, are what should be considered the additional emissions reductions that were achieved through this initiative. Now, that is just a very basic framework. And additionality is one of the more hotly debated topics in the voluntary carbon market today. Some would say the most hotly debated topic, which is why there's been a series of initiatives in recent years, including the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, to try to establish agreed upon standards that can be used to measure carbon credit quality, including for additionality. And this is just the summarization. These are not the actual core carbon principles. But what you'll see here is that additionality is the first thing asked about when verifying the emissions impact, being greenhouse gas emissions associated with carbon credits. And what it comes out to is these emissions reductions or removals would not have occurred in the absence of the incentive created by carbon credit revenues. That's the summary. Now, let's make this a little more practical. Have you ever seen carbon credits that were issued from Yellowstone National Park? No, of course not. And if you do see any, don't buy them. It's probably a scam. I love Yellowstone National Park. I used to go there all the time as a kid. It was a common thing for my family to do road trips. My dad's family's from out in Wyoming originally, but I grew up in the city of Chicago. So we would drive out there in the minivan for the summer pretty commonly. Now, Yellowstone National Park, like many national parks in the United States, has extensive forests that deserve protection. But here's the thing. It's illegal to cut down trees in Yellowstone National Park. And not only is it illegal to cut down trees in Yellowstone, the laws are enforced. And additionally, there's funding that is provided for the sufficient maintenance of this park. I'm sure that all national parks could use more funding, but there's enough money to avoid illegal logging in this park at the very least. And so because of that, if you were to put money into national park for a carbon project, there's really no good argument that those credits would be additional because this place has already been conserved. Now, I want to take us now from the very basics of what additionality is into an example that shows why it is a complicated topic and something that is a subject of ongoing debate. But I'm not going to get too technical. We're going to stay on the edge of beginner level understanding. And so this next page is from the Verified Carbon Standard by Vera. And this is the way that you can access data and documentation of the carbon projects that are certified and issued carbon credits under the Verified Carbon Standard. And this one takes place at National Reserve and National Park in Peru. And, I just said, don't buy carbon credits from Yellowstone. I don't think they exist, but, hopefully they don't. But maybe it's a good idea. In fact, maybe it's an excellent idea to support carbon projects in places that don't have the same kinds of resources as Yellowstone National Park. Is the law as protective there, even though it's a national park? From country to country, the laws are different. Even if the law protects this national park, is that actually working in practice? Does this park have enough money in order to fund its self-maintenance? Do the people in the area, do they have economic opportunities other than deforestation so they can support their families without causing greenhouse gas emissions through deforesting this area? These are questions that are complicated and very important if we want to figure out the right way to fund climate mitigation around the world. In the context of a carbon project, the way this is assessed is you can take a look at the carbon project documentation, where the project proponents take a look at what are the criteria they have to achieve, how do you fit the project activities into those criteria, and what are the arguments for things like additionality. And so you'll read about all the assumptions and findings and what was the deforestation rate, et cetera, in these sections of carbon project documentation. And so I'm going to wrap this video up there, keep it on the shorter side, but that's the core topic and concept of what additionality is and why it matters for carbon credits. I'm going to be producing a series of videos in the coming weeks that dive into other topics to understand the basics of the voluntary carbon market and carbon credits. But we will also be later producing a series of more advanced topics. I have been a climate finance attorney since I was in law school. I worked in the voluntary carbon market for a couple of years. I still do, but I did it as a carbon attorney, and now I do it as the CEO of Greenomix, where we are seeking to provide carbon offset solutions for responsible businesses, and that is a topic for other videos. We are focusing in this series on education topics to help more people get involved and understand both the benefits and the considerations in working in the voluntary carbon market. So thank you very much. Again, my name is Cary Shepard, and please subscribe to this channel if you're interested in watching more. Thanks.